Ooh, doggy. It always gets me going for this stuff. Welcome to the Sober Heathen podcast. I'm the Sober Heathen. Going to be a great conversation tonight. Got my friend James. Just met James a little while ago, but kind of been messaging back a little bit back and forth. He's across the way. Where's across the way, James?
Scotland, just outside of Glasgow.
Hell yeah, that is Glasgow, man. So just, I was going to ask you this before we went live. You a WWE guy at all?
No, not for years. When I was a youngster,
it's my guilty pleasure. And when I hear you talk, I hear one of the wrestlers, Drew McIntyre, talking. He's from Scotland in that area. So anyway, that's my nerd showing. So anyway, we'll ignore the nerd part of that. So James, man, thanks for coming on the podcast. Feel free to tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you into the recovery realm.
I'll give you a wee brief of my story. So I mean, basically growing up, I'm pretty neurospicy, right? I don't know how neurospicy, because over here it's it's a 5 to 10 year waiting list to get an assessment. But it made it really difficult kind of getting through school. So I mean, I got kind of picked on right through school by teachers, by our kids, and by the time I kind of hit high school, I found an escape in drinking, using substances, and it kind of, it led me right into, dealing drugs and just and that lifestyle, and working in a market, an unregulated market that regulates itself with violence. So it just kept the perpetual trauma flowing. And eventually I found kind of hard substances that just really took the edge off my pain. And that's what I was really looking to do, just escape the pain of just feeling like nothing, like a nobody, like I was worthless. And that went through, that was a good 15 odd years, near 20 years I was kind of in that life, and for me, I tried everything. I tried NET, so the neuroelectrotherapy. I did that in a Christian rehab, and I found it really tricky because I didn't do any psychosocial work. I was scared by the radical Christianity. I just thought, and I was back on the street as soon as I got out of the place, and I tried all the ORT and all that kind of stuff, and jail and all drug treatment testing orders, and none of it worked. It just always ended up in the same place. And for me, what was a real kind of game changer was my friend ended up posting me some DMT, and I was living in a homeless hostel at the time, and I was at the point where even drug dealers wouldn't trust me to sell drugs anymore, because I was terrible at selling drugs. I was just good at taking them, so my mates just gave me an experience that allowed me to see where I was at and see that I had the possibility of changing it. That I could I could maybe go a different route. I could get out of the destructive way that I was operating and get into being a bit creative and try to create something in my life. And yeah, I was just telling you before the podcast, like after that, I was going out to guys' houses that I sold drugs with and I scored drugs off, and I'm telling them I've had this spiritual awakening with this crazy molecule, and they're going, "Are you buying anything?" Well, if you're not buying anything, then get out. You're scaring my customers away. So I realised some of my friendships were pretty fickle as well, and then so it took a couple of years. I didn't last long with that kind of that awakening, but it stirred something up in me and it made me start looking at options. And eventually I found my way into a rehab. It was kind of based on Delancey Street over in America and San Patrignano in Italy. And there's another one in Sweden as well that kind of it took some inspiration from. I spent 3-4 years in there, like kind of working. We started a cafe and it was an amazing time in my life. I was introduced to the 12 step. I was introduced to the recovery movement, and I had some amazing years in there, and that's where I first began the kind of healing journey, and since then I've been on it ever since, and I've been like just yeah, trying to find new and more interesting ways to heal. But that always stuck with me about DMT and just about the potential of it, and in fellowship I try to speak about it, and you always get the kind of funny looks in the side eye for trying to speak about it, and it's and as I started reading and I started learning, it's like my dad had told me about the belladonna treatment, and I hadn't properly researched it, and when I started looking at Bill's story, and how he actually got sober in a bit more detail when I was in recovery myself, I realised that he'd used these really crazy strong plants. So, the belladonna treatment was it was like deadly nightshade, and that's like, I remember telling the gardener at the rehab about how Bill had used belladonna, and he's like, you can't even sleep underneath that flower. If the pollen falls on you while you're sleeping, it'll kill you. So it's like really, really potent plant medicine. That's what helped Bill see the light. And that's what helped him have his spiritual awakening. And even in recovery, Bill also was in contact with Aldous Huxley, and Aldous Huxley said to him when he was struggling with his depression, you should try acid, and he did, and he pitched it to the 12 step kind of to say we could incorporate this into this model, and it was shot down on the basis of, well, if we say that, we're kind of admitting that the program doesn't work by itself. But I mean, that's kind of being revisited now with psychedelics and recovery. They're looking at kind of revisiting that fork in the road and exploring what could have been. I'm really grateful because I left 12 step like a bit kind of peeved with it, and I left with resentment, and any 12 step was not about resentment. So when I come across this model at a psychedelic conference, I was like, yes, brilliant. This is a chance to heal that resentment. And a chance to maybe actually go through the book with some people, because I never got the chance because I was in a rehab, it was COVID, and I didn't have the freedom to go and take people through the book. So I lost out on a big chunk of the 12-step program. And, I just started going through the book again, and I just went through step 1 today, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm really enjoying it. And it's interesting the way they're working to incorporate the psychedelic experience and intention, which is a massive thing. It's like, are you going for escapism, or are you going for healing? What's the what's the goal here? So yeah, man, that's I'm going off on a wee bit, but yeah. I mean,
Yeah, man. 1,200 things going through my head. You called it the amazing molecule, and I thought that was friggin' hilarious, because it really can be, man. It was great. Escapism, or you're looking for healing. I think those are two very important things. If you're honest with yourself, what you're going about this uh, journey for. I don't think, we were talking before we went live, I think it's page 7 or page 9 in Bill's story is where Bill, like, it's like a half a sentence. I was in this hospital and where I was on the belladonna treatment. And then he goes on to the next thing and just kind of glazes over. Well, what does that mean? Well, from my understanding and the research that I've done, it was a cocktail of a variety of things, including nightshade. It was once an hour for about 50 hours was the regimen. So this dude was getting psychedelics frequently for 2 days.
And that'll do it. That'll do it. I mean, like, we have such amazing plants. Like, when we're talking about treating addiction, you have things like ibogaine. Like, the masters of work in ibogaine are the Bawiti, and like, in Africa, like, they've been working with this for a long, long, long time. And these indigenous tribes, they are the masters of working with these things. Like, no doubt about it. Like, but you look at the results with addictions, and you look at, like, even from underground clinics. I remember seeing it in the back of a stoner magazine years ago, and like, it was an advert because it used to be legal in the UK. You could go and you could go and get treatment for your addictions, and you could go and sit with ibogaine, and it was like advertised at £1,000, and I remember sitting there with mates going, "What? What one of us has got £1,000 to go and get this treatment?" And it was like laughing at it, but it got banned, it got driven underground, and then even the research. Like, a friend of mine, the first time I met her, she stood up at a conference and she said, "She's like, I've been working with people with HIV, I've been working with addicts in the street. What are you doing for us?" And I thought, she's interesting. I need to speak to her. Like, and it was just the other week I realised why she said that, because she'd realised that the research that was going on with ibogaine was with healthy patients. So you've got this amazing medicine for treating addiction, but they're not treating addiction in the research. They're trying to understand the biological mechanisms on a healthy body rather than actually make a difference with the research they're doing in people's lives. So, I mean, she was absolutely fair in her criticism.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know a lot about ibogaine either, but I think what is important here, and where people like in AA that are on my feed, the ones that want to get huffy at what I say, Bill went back to the LSD thing in the 50s. So this was like almost 20 years after AA was created. And the dude, whether you want to admit it or not, the dude was still struggling. The program that he created didn't alleviate everything. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed to do this, right? And this is not a hit on AA. This is just what happened, right? So he needed a little bit more. And so he went, and I know a lot of people know this, that it was, I don't know if it was prescribed the right word, but it was under supervision, right? Medical supervision, where he did the LSD. Yeah. So, but still, he went back because he thought there was something to it. And it's very interesting to see how fast AA got intertwined in all the treatment centers. There's a book out there, the US of AA, check it out. Kind of lines that up a little bit on how it is, like, everything is 12-step, all the treatment centers. There was one day I was in the office, and again, I should probably watch what I say sometimes, but I was in the office talking with a fellow coworker about some criticisms of the 12-step, and the boss a couple doors down is like, "Hey, we're a 12-step facility, don't forget." And they weren't saying that as if to, "Hey, shut up, just, hey, keep in mind we are a 12-step facility. You can't be questioning these things, in earshot of clients," which is a concern on its own. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm going to get off topic and get myself in trouble. So,
See, like, I kind of liken it. It's got some similarities, like, because I mean, 12-step, it's rooted in Christian values. It's like that was its original conception, and like, I kind of link it in with the Garden of Eden. And I was speaking about this with my pal the other day, and it's like that story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, right? So, like, I always annoy Christians with this one, like, but that story, who lied? Was it the serpent that lied? Was it God? Because God told Adam and Eve that they'd die if they ate from the tree of knowledge. Right? The serpent came and said, "No, you won't die if you eat from the tree of knowledge. You'll just be more like God." So they ate from the tree of knowledge. They gained duality, right, and became more like God. So the serpent told the truth, all right. But what was God's motivation? It was like, it was like, no, you can't be like me.
Right.
And it's the same with Bill W. And the same with the way this is rolled out over time, the way this dogma has kind of played out. It's swept under the carpet and it's kept quiet. And I mean, there's a lot of that stuff with the kind of inversion of Christianity because elevating your consciousness is in my opinion, the teachings of Jesus. It's like it's becoming more like God, and that's what these molecules have the power to do, help us access divinity, but only when we do them in a responsible and respectful way, when our intentions are pure. And that's it's trying to establish that in the culture, because now the cat's out the bag with science. So these things are flooding the streets. I mean, my friend was telling me the two most used substances in the area she works is DMT and ketamine. But these are kids with DMT pens. So there's no context that links it to spirit. And these things are powerful medicines. You can get untethered from reality with these things. And who's there picking up the pieces? Who's there to deal with the fallout of this stuff? Because our models that we've currently got, we've been working with sedation for 70 years. That's been the go-to. I find it really difficult to trust these establishments. There's a friend of mine, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me speaking about it. She spoke about it publicly on multiple occasions. But I mean, the medical institutions gave her son a lethal dose of a medicine. He went into cardiac arrest while under their care after a bipolar episode. And this is all been exposed by whistleblowers. And these are people we're meant to trust to roll these medicines out into the market. What sees a lot of people positioning to be the middleman between us and nature, patenting molecules and getting into position to sell them back. Because that's what science does. It produces products, it doesn't produce solutions. And basically, do we really need that? They grow out the ground. I met the Scottish drugs minister the other day, and I realised that she had a background in pharmacology. So I went and I briefly spoke to her. I said, "Why is healing such a dirty word in pharmacology? Because you know as well as me, if you want to heal it, you've got to feel it. And when you're working with numbness as your primary model of care, then And I said to her, my question is, when are people from my community going to be able to work with people in my community using the medicine that grows in our land? And her response was, to get through the NHS, it needs a really strong evidence base and it needs to make economic sense. I'm like, we've got 70 plus years of data and they grow out the ground. What more economic sense can it make than that? But it's seems to only be when it makes financial sense to powerful people that we get any change.
Yeah, I mean, this is this is going to sound, yeah, you know what? It's the truth, though. You know what I mean? A lot of things are going to crumble and fall down if we start fixing these things as opposed to just treating them. We start finding ways to actually help people heal instead of escape, or not feel at all, like you said. Here's 12 prescriptions. Go take these, and go numb yourself into oblivion. But you have these other options out here that could really be saving some lives. I as we're kind of talking, and I can feel some of the, and not that they watch my podcast very much, but some of the other people that don't think like I do. What you guys are saying is dangerous. Well, what's dangerous is the clients that have walked in and said that they're on MAT, they're on medically assisted treatment. They're taking Suboxone instead of going out and getting street drugs, or they're doing the Sinclair method as opposed to just cold turkey and dying from, you can die from trying to detox from alcohol on your own. You know what I mean? We're offering other options. That's all that this is, just other things to look into to have some other pathways. You know what I mean? And telling people, like, people have been told, you're not doing this right. You're not welcome here. I've had people legit be told that they're not welcome in these meetings because they're not doing it that way. What's more dangerous? Giving people multiple pathways to walk down, or tell them you don't belong here when they're reaching out for help? You know what I mean? What's worse?
See, I gotta say, all right, like I'm being quite critical, but I'm 100% supportive of ORT, of every option going, all right, because it's like that's exactly right. It's the more options people have, the more people are gonna get well. Like, and I know people that are well, that are on treatment, they're doing amazing, all right. It's not for me to say who needs to feel their pain. That's not my, it's up to the person. Like, some people have trauma that they just, asking them to step in and face it is just, it's cruel. And so I'm not suggesting this is a fix all, and I'm not suggesting it's for everybody, because it's not. It's really not. Like, it's, but for some people, it can be a massive help. I mean, like in the UK a while back, like we had an amazing model for treatment, right? Like, there's a guy called Dr. John Marks, right? He was working by Liverpool, and he was prescribing heroin to people. He was prescribing cocaine to one patient, and there's a video on YouTube of what actually shut this down. So he ended up on 60 Minutes in America, and when he ended up on it, he was the one patient he was prescribing cocaine is what got him shut down. But there was a woman that used to be a street worker, and she's pushing her daughter on the swing, looking sound as a pound, you know. And what sounds crazy in this day and age, but what you used to be able to do is you used to be able to go into the chemist with 20 cigarettes, and they'd inject your diamorphine into the 20 cigarettes. So you could just go about your day, smoke your cigarettes, and consume your medicine. All right, like, so it would be, but that one patient getting prescribed cocaine was enough to annoy the American government. All right, they didn't like the looks of that, because they were in the middle of waging a war against crack, which they were actually importing into the country to fund the war in Nicaragua. So they shut down one of the best models of treatment we've had in the UK ever, and it was it was pressure from the States that got it shut down. He got moved to a different health board, but he couldn't do it, and that's what closed down that treatment. And nowadays you couldn't do that anymore, because drug users aren't simple like that anymore. People don't just have one drug of choice. Everyone's poly drug users. It's like, so, if you were to just prescribe that one substance, to just use something else. Because for a lot of people, it's like, it's the situations they're in, it's the economic hardship, it's the, it's like, it's the lack of community resources. It's like, there's a whole raft of things. I mean, people say addiction hits everybody, and it does. But in your more affluent communities, like, I'm quoting an Irish politician I heard speaking the other day, but it just really hit home. And she was like, in the more wealthy and affluent communities, they can point to the one person in the street that ended up with cirrhosis of the liver and died. All right, whereas in the communities I come from, and she comes from, it's easier to count the people that are still alive, So, I mean, yeah, it does hit everyone, but it doesn't hit everyone equally, like, and even I've got a lecturer. His research looked at the impact of heroin on kind of middle to high earning heroin users, and turned out the outcomes weren't too bad. They were buying pretty clean heroin. They were going to work every day, working as lawyers, all sorts of different things. And if they ever decided they want to stop, you just go to rehab. So like the effects of these things are mainly economic. The problems come when people can't afford drugs. You know, like it's like it's with heroin anyway. I think it can be managed in a reasonable way until it's not, and if it's not, then it's like this is why we need recovery. But yeah,
People want to spin it like it's it's a lower income, it's a poverty problem. Addiction is mostly there, and there's some truth to that, because that's all they can afford. That's all they can get access to, right? Is this shit, and you wonder why it looks so bad in comparative to, like you're saying, higher class people are out there doing these same drugs, and that their life isn't falling apart necessarily. Like you said, maybe they got to go to treatment for a week or two or a month or something, and then they're back at it. But these people are trying to find a way to cope, to with whatever's going on in here and here. And when they don't have access, we have to realize that it's a resource thing, man. And imagine being able to grow some plants or something to be able to help people, and how much easier that would be. You wouldn't have to go sit in the waiting room. You wouldn't have to make an appointment and wait 3 weeks. You wouldn't have to, just, I don't know. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but
I totally agree with you. See if we could grow some plants. We could turn around to somebody and go, all right, so what, you're into opiates? Well, let's go harvest some poppies and go learn some organic chemistry. All right, and then you're producing chemists,
right,
rather than the opposite.
right.
It's tap into these interests. If people are into something, tap into it. And make it constructive. And this is what I see with psychedelics. This is 100% what I see with psychedelics. There's opportunities for people to be working in their communities. When we look at the way other cultures deal with mental illness, all right, if people are hearing voices in the jungle, you're took to the shaman, and you're taught to harness that as a gift. And you're taught to work with a medicine. Over here, you're branded with a diagnosis, and that's you. We don't integrate these things into our society. There's a quote someone came out with. What was it? What's the difference between insanity and enlightenment? Who you tell.
Right? It's the difference between insanity and enlightenment. Who you tell. Oh yeah, dude. Just for the one-liners, this has already been one of my favorite podcasts. So, what if somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, I don't even know how to ask this question," because there's a way of thinking in the AA realm, where people would be almost afraid to come out and say, "Hey, I would like to try something else," because now they've created this group of people, this fellowship, to use their word, that they don't want to lose these people, but it's not really working. You know what I mean?
See, I had an interesting discussion with a guy that works in a rehab the other day, and I was saying it to him. I was like, I think these things can be really helpful, and and I was like, what kind of model do you use? What kind of model of recovery? And he's like, I use 12-step. I'm like, right, well, what about the unfortunates? All right. If they can't get to some degree of spirituality, do you not think that this could be something that could help awaken spirituality in the unfortunates? And I mean, he turned on me and he goes, oh ho ho, you're misinterpreting that line, because that line's not about reality. That line's not saying that there's any unfortunates. It's meant to be motivational. You're meant to read that and go, I'm not going to be one of them unfortunates. I'm like, in my head, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, but I mean, we've got like a 5 to 10% success rate. Like, so there is still unfortunates. There is still people that don't get this stuff. So we do need to expand it more. But I'm just not going to sit and really argue it. And it's like some of the attitudes I get hit with is a guy, a brilliant guy, really, really clever, switched on guy. And I bumped into him one day and he's like, "Oh, it's you with the vegan recovery, innit?" I'm like, "Aye, plant-based, mate." And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Mate, like, keep laughing because one day we'll get it in the MAT standards." And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 that's dangerous. What about the true addict?" And I debate that, like, because when you look at the neuroscience of addiction, all right, like, so you look at, you have this part of the brain responsible for risk assessment that's overridden by the dopamine cascade. So over time spent using, that part of your brain reduces in grey matter, all right, like, so your capacity for risk assessment is taken away from you. So that's where that kind of using against your will comes from. Is that you can't look at risk and say this isn't good for me. So yeah, but when you get into recovery, what happens is within 6 months, right, like it's like any muscle, when you work it, it grows back. And through that process of building it back up again, you're more capable of risk assessment. There's more grey matter in that area than there was before. Like, so, the idea of the born addict, I can't, like, I can't kind of accept that as fact because it doesn't stand up to scientific scrutiny. Like, I would never, ever advise anybody who stopped using their substance of choice to go back and try it just to see if because that's just absolutely reckless. And it's those neural pathways are still there. They're still active in the brain. You can still tap into that misery, tap into that feelings, tap into that emotional space just through the association, just through that practice, that ritual. You can't let that animal out the cage. So
As out there, some might think this conversation has been, which is not. It's like right there. It's not out there at all. I have been told by some people in AA to, when I say that I don't call myself an alcoholic anymore, they have legit told me, "Well, go drink then." Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I don't drink anymore, so I'm not going to identify as that person anymore. I've moved on. That's not Scott, the alcoholic, anymore. I'm just Scott. I'm living my life. You know what I mean? And when we have these discussions, Adam and I, and now you and I, James, we're not advocating anything. We're not trying to tell you what to do. We're not saying, "Hey, go do this," or "Hey, prove it." It's just a dialogue. And I'm sorry, that just stuck in my head when you said that. But those pathways, it's interesting, and I'd love to have a conversation sometime about that. Maybe do a panel thing, about being born that way, as opposed to, because you see so many people that have come through families that was one addiction after another, and it never touched them. You know what I mean? Like, mom and dad both heavy drinkers or hard drinkers, and Jesus, here we go. Now my mind's going. So you had said real alcohol or real addict. You know what I mean? And that's something that keeps popping up when I have these discussions. People in the comments, "Well, if you were a real alcoholic, like the Sinclair method," I had Bruce on from the Sinclair method. I'm gonna have Katie on from the Sinclair method soon. And well, if you can take this pill and it can change you retrain your brain that you're not getting the same reward that you were getting from alcohol before, then you weren't a real alcoholic. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can use this pathway, you weren't. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? Like, nobody's like, "Hey, I'm going to pretend to be an alcoholic just so I can go do the Sinclair method and pretend." I just
see, it's the power of belief, like, and it's totally understandable. And it's like, basically, through that belief keeps people safe. That belief saves lives. All right, that belief that you know, you are that person and you need to, you know, but at a point it stops serving you quite as much. Because I mean, like I struggle. I don't like. This is one of the reasons why I stepped away from fellowship. Is because I felt like I was keeping that part of me alive by going into a community centre, a church, and speaking about that person that is like three odd years ago. I
Yeah.
was that person, and I've grown a lot from that point, and I'm not that person anymore. The only thing that was keeping it alive is those stories that I'd tell, when I'd share, when I'd like, when I'd share from the body of the hall, when I'd speak to people about my past. You know, that's keeping that part of me alive, and it's like it's partially creating a shadow that that you're not integrating, like and that's like shadow work's been a massive part of my journey as well. I mean, like Carl Jung was, he's a really really interesting dude, and I mean, like yeah, integrating those parts, looking at the parts that don't serve you, and letting them go, like to move on, to move forward, to move towards wholeness, because like these I had an experience where I was sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony, and like I was purging into a bucket, right? And I was like, there's no sick coming out. There's just metaphysical trauma, like, and I'm on my knees, and I'm like, right. And eventually I get tired, and I kind of flop onto my arm, and I hear something. There's this bit of paranoia that comes up, and then I ask myself, I go, who's that? Where's that coming from? And I come to face young me, young child me comes and appears, and he like. And I'm like, what's the matter? What are you saying that for? And he's like, I'm scared. And I'm like, well, I'm scared too. Let's be scared together. And I'm like, eventually, I'm like, right, do you want to get up from the crook of my arm? And do you want to look around this retreat and see if anyone else is scared? So I look around, and like, there's a big muscly guy, and I'm like, look, he's bloody terrified. And he's like, and he looks like a UFC fighter. It's not that scary anymore. And I'm like, and I'm like working IFS on myself in that situation. Like, it's trying to bring all these parts in and show them the love they need. Because all these, like, parts that we exile and we say, no, I don't like that part of myself, they sit in the background. And they're the ones going, nah, 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 and tripping you up and throwing spanners in the works. And, yeah, still burning holes in your clothes, like, and I don't need them. They just need a hug. They just need brought home. Like, and it's working with these different models because there's so many ways to healing. I mean, we were speaking about it before we started, and I was like, I was saying about all the kind of somatic stuff and all your kind of your stuff in the alt health space. So it's like, there's things like there's breath work. There's like, and these things are deeply psychedelic. If you go with a good kind of breathwork practitioner, they can take you to really deep places. The kind of sound stuff, like movement. It's like there's a lot in it. Like Vessel van der Kolk. He talks about body being stored. Trauma being stored in the body. So the idea of of getting an intellectual understanding of it, of speaking about it. It's like, yeah, it works. Some people are really skilled practitioners in that field, like, but you speak the word out and you soak it back in again, and that's tricky to work with. And that's why I find these different models really interesting, especially when it comes to addiction, because like, we have the trauma that happened to us, that everyone's like, most people are happy to speak it. Well, not happy, sorry. Like, people will speak about that a lot more freely and stuff like the perpetrator trauma, the stuff that you did, You know what I mean? That's a lot more difficult to speak about. So it's a lot more difficult to heal. You know, like, so these different modalities that work without words, you know, it can be a powerful tool in the recovery field. You know, I was telling you about a practice that my friend does. So, you know, it's like you're sitting across from two people and you're looking them in the eyes and you're holding eye contact with one of them and they're going, I'm sorry. And then you're looking at the other one, you're going, I'm sorry. And you're back to the first one, I'm sorry. All right. And then it goes to, I forgive you. And then it goes to, thank you, remember. So it ends on a light note, you know, like first time I done it, I was too dumb. I couldn't get to my emotions. The second time I done it, you know, I was seeing people, like I was actually getting into like picturing the people I need to say sorry to, the people I need to say I forgive you to, the sorries I need to hear, you know, like, and I was crying my eyes out. I got this release, and I got like, you know, I got to move past some of my pain, you know, and it's like, you know, these things are powerful, you know, like for me, a 12-step model. You see what it gave me? It gave me a foundation. Right? It gave me an introduction to spiritual practices, and it gave me a guide to life. It gave me principles to live by, right? And a way to begin my healing journey. But from there, it was like, oh, look, there's this whole buffet of other possibilities out there, you know, that also have amazing aspects to them, you know, and yeah,
Yeah. So like something that I never did was journaling, and this is just something that's very in the very tip top. If you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out a way to get started, I tell clients like use your filters. You have two filters here, and you have two filters on the side of your head, and that's what therapy is basically, in my opinion. Like you're getting all these thoughts and feelings out through your mouth, and then you're refiltering them back through in here. And a lot of times you can do some work on your own. What helped me the most was writing it down. So I'd write down all these thoughts, everything, you know, even it's like, I want to stab this person in the eyeball, you know, whatever it was in that moment, write it down and then filter it back through your eyeballs and you get a whole new look at this thing. And that's, that's kind of where I started my shadow work. So James, if somebody came up to you and said, what does shadow work look like? Like just in a sentence or two, because I love hearing people's thoughts on this stuff, because I actually bought a journal to try to walk me through it, and I ended up just going off on my own little tangent. But what would you say if somebody said, James, I want to know more about this shadow work? How would you sell it to them?
shadow work, exploring those parts of yourself that you don't really want to explore, those parts of yourself that you know you try to reject. You try to say, I don't like that. I don't like that part of me. You know, it's exploring it and trying to get to acceptance of these parts.
Yeah.
It's like you know, the journaling's a great one for it. You know, like, you know, I worked through my friend, she ran a wee shadow work course, and it was like weekly you were looking at like different little aspects, you know, it was just, you know, it was like some of it was like digging through the past, some of it was looking at the present, looking at, you know, how these things show up in the present, you know, how these parts of you are still protecting you. Because that's what most of it is. Most of it is things that you've developed as protection, like is to keep you safe, you know. So for me, shadow work is saying it's okay, I'm safe. You know, you don't need to protect me anymore. You know, and you know, and giving these parts of you the peace that they need to stop interrupting and derailing your life. Like, and there's loads of different ways of approaching it. You know, it's
Sure.
like
What got me thinking about that was, and I think, and you just touched on it again, I really liked it. Like, you know, it's easier to talk about all the things that these people did to me than it is for me to talk about all these things that I've done. You know what I mean? Like, got to explore those things. Like you kind of pointed behind you, like those things are back there kind of whispering in your ear, you know, as you're, you know, living your life. And those are the kind of they're in your shadow. I really liked how you presented that, man. Yeah.
these. I mean, and these things torture you. You know what I mean? It's no like I'm sure a lot of people can relate, but I mean, like, you know, I can go into spirals of depression. I can get to a point where I just hate myself.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, and at the end of the day, it's like you need to heal. You know, you need to, yeah, you need to forgive yourself at some point and kind of move forward.
Well, we're a little slow on the comments today. Adam said, this is my boy Adam, the true addict, quote, is a marketing term coined by the committee that approved the big book. It's just such a, I get what they're trying to do, man, but I don't know why this one bugs me so much. The real alcoholic, when I'm reading through that, part of the book, I think Bill is trying to help you diagnose yourself. Like, this is you. If you are a real alcoholic, this is some things that you may or may not do. You know what I mean? Like, you may be a hard drinker if you don't do these things. You know what I mean? Like, it certainly wasn't to be turned on people and to be used as like and it's kind of ironic. I'm worse than you. I'm a real alcoholic. You're just a normal alcoholic or addict. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
See, something I've seen that I thought was really quite powerful, right? Like, I hope I'm not getting bothered for sharing this, but it was in a psychedelics and recovery meeting, right? And what you had sitting in this meeting was you had somebody who had come into the fellowship through a cannabis addiction. And you had somebody else who was struggling with cocaine and alcohol. And what they found was smoking cannabis, like, was a harm reduction tool that stopped them drinking alcohol and sniffing cocaine. All right. So in the same meeting, you have somebody who this substance is their problem and it's their solution. All right. Coexisting without judgment. All right.
Beautiful.
And I thought that was really powerful.
That's
because
awesome.
It's like you're not living within this single track road, because there's not just one road in life. There's not. It's, you see, the thing, what it does is it keeps it black and white. All right, it's easy. You can stay within that structure. You know that's okay. That's not. But life's not like that. Life's multicolored. Life's technicolor. You know what I mean? And a lot of grey too. So it's like, yeah.
There's at least 50 shades of gray.
Totally.
That's great. So they're in the same group, having open conversations about the things going on in their lives, and one person's device, or not device, but their hook is another person's heel, right? That's kind of what you're saying. That's
totally. And it's like it's a big issue. You see in the whole kind of recovery movement, like it's the divisiveness between like harm reduction and recovery. It's that, and some of it's down to ideology, some of it's down to funding. Like it's just like, but it's not helpful. It doesn't help anybody in the street. And anyone that's out working the front lines, they know fine well. It's like, there's no point being staunch in anything. If you're working with somebody, it's what that person needs,
right.
Not what you think's the best thing for them. It's like it's meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no division on the front lines when people are doing this work. No, the division is just like, it's just, yeah. Like, and I'd like to hope, like, psychedelics, they don't sit staunchly in either camp. They're kind of, there's a bit of both. Like, and I'd love it if they could be something that could help bridge that gap between the two of them and help repair this wound, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I think discussions like these and people with the research that you've done and the knowledge that you have, I think they need to happen more and more, because there's that saying out there, there's no money in a cure. It holds some weight, and that's very sad, but that's why we got to have people out here talking about other ways to try to get other ways out into the universe that maybe people can latch onto and pull themselves out of whatever the hole they're in, because we're not getting any better, right? Like, I've only worked where I work for 2 years, and we have people coming in nonstop, all day, every day, signing up for services coming straight from the courthouse. So there's no end in sight to this thing. So we haven't figured it out yet. So to try to say otherwise is just wrong. You haven't. It's not. If we had something that was foolproof, it would be showing that time and time again. We just don't have it yet. So we got to keep talking. I like what James said. You got to meet people where they're at. Absolutely. And if that's a plant, then it's a plant. You know what I mean?
I mean, like some of the best research in psychedelics happened back in the first wave. Like the first wave of research, that was like when it comes to addiction, that's when there was the most comprehensive research into addiction. There's not as much being done with addiction anymore. Like, and I mean, the way we're going with it, it's like, I mean, it's in the UK just now. Someone told me the other day that there's one therapist to every 5,000 people. Right? So, like, all right. So, talk of AI therapy is now looking at a future, and someone pitched it to me, and they're like, better than nothing. And I was like, yeah, all right. But that is essentially the model psychedelics are likely to follow. Because you look at the people behind a lot of these companies, your Peter Thiels, like, and that's what they're into. Like they're into AI, they're into cutting costs, they're into saving money. So that's likely going to be the rollout. That's going to be how it happens, right? And that's not the way to be working with these things. Science, like I remember speaking about how to deal with a psychotic break, right? And we were speaking about the clinic, and the one doctor says like, so we try to talk the person down, and if we couldn't talk them down, like we have drugs on hand, so we can sedate them, like. But it's the worst possible outcome because what you're doing is you're reinforcing a sense of powerlessness over struggle, right? And so you're it's a really negative outcome, right? So there was a couple of people there that could speak up for the ceremony, like, and the one person spoke about you don't even call it a psychotic break in the ceremony, you call it a breakthrough. That's a load of emotion that somebody's been carrying for years, and they're finally getting a chance to get it out. So in the ceremony setting, the shaman directed everybody to sing at the person because she wouldn't stop screaming, so they all sang at her, right? And like one person described it like rowing her to shore to safety with her song, right? Like, and it's using community and it's using sound as healing modalities, right? It's not just counting on a pharmacological intervention and someone talking. It's love. That's what it is. You know what I mean? And that's the magic of these compounds. So I asked the doctor, I go, how do you proactively use sound in the clinic setting? He's like, we can't. It's a variable. Everyone gets the same playlist. So forever, the Shipibo, the Hunikuan, the Yawanawa, the masters are working with these things. All right? They're not working with variables. They're working with magic. They're working with intention. All right? They're working with a drum. They're working with sound. They're working with song. They're working with community. All right? That's what it's about. It's like these things, yeah, they've got all the neuroplasticity and that, but what they give you the opportunity to do is feel a part of something,
right?
And feel like your part is valued. That's communitas, all right? And that's the medicine. Not just eating the plants, that feeling. Because that's the opposite of addiction, according to Johann Hari. Connection. And that's what we're needing to tap into. You don't get any connection sitting in your house with an AI chatbot, eating some like sterile compound made in a lab somewhere that's never seen a plant. All right. That's not all right. And what's your intention behind that? Is your intention profit? Because your intention's profit, it's not medicine, that's drugs. For it to be medicine, it needs to have conscious, loving intention behind it. I'm getting into quantum physics here because it's like, it's an issue. And the way we make medicine is we outsource it to places with worse labor rights. So you get that person's energy, all right? That chemist, all right? He's essentially performing alchemy and entangling it with his energy, all right? And he's miserable because he's getting paid diddy money, you know, and that's what you're getting in it. So any psychoactive substance, I say about weed, all right? Like, if I get a bit of weed, if someone passes me a spliff, it's been grown in a factory by some people trafficked wee guy, all right? It's got his energy all over it, and you feel it in the high, all right? You feel it, it's like, get 2 puffs into it, and you go, that's making me anxious, all right? Why is it making me anxious? Because the guy that's grown it's been anxious the full time he's been growing it. He's been fearful of his life. He doesn't know how his family are getting on. He's full of fear. So you get plants to make you scared because of that process. Like, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, we need to look at this and like actually consider it, because otherwise we're just going to end up with Prozac 2.0.
Dude, what is blowing my mind right now, and this is call this a spiritual experience if you want, but my TikTok feed and other video feeds have been nothing but vibration the last 2 3 days. And here's James talking about, the energy and vibrations that are being put into these things, and it's being transferred from, oh, this made me anxious. Well, last time it didn't make you anxious. Maybe it was, the same variety, but from somebody that wasn't, vibrating at that level, right? Like, it's like, I don't know. I only bring that up, James, because I feel like this is a conversation that was supposed to happen for me today. Maybe that's a little out there, but I really feel like this was perfect timing.
I live my life by synchronicities. It's like these wee things. It's like, it's so weird. It's like, and it's only since I got into recovery. It's like,
Right.
I never got synchronicities. Like, well, I did, but they were like, maybe one every couple of years. It was like, I must have been thinking something positive at that point, and it was like, look, you're on a positive track here, and I was back on to something negative. All right, but yeah, it's like nowadays they come so thick and fast. It's just crazy, crazy. And it's, you see, when they stop happening, it's usually when I fall into ego. As my mate put it, edging out God, or edging God out. When I'm doing that and I'm in myself, the synchronicities stop and things start like, I start realizing that I'm being overbearing and I'm thinking I'm a big man. And I'm like, whoa, you need to stop. You need to get back and you need to meditate. You need to ground yourself. You need to like get humble.
Well, I think I might go do some breath work stuff. That's the only thing I haven't tried yet, but it comes highly suggested by James. So I think that's what my night routine is going to be tonight, listening to some meditation and doing some breath work. Dude, I feel like I got to have you back on when Adam's available, because I feel like we've barely scratched the surface on the discussion that could be had. So please, we're coming up on our hour here, but please, if you're available, man, let's try to make that happen again here in the future. And this was really fun.
Let's do it, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, man.
Yeah, dude. Let's stay in contact and keep chatting. And I appreciate the info that you're putting out there, my friend. We're gonna help somebody. Somebody's gonna see this, and somebody's gonna, they're gonna find their way out of this thing. So that's what we're here for.
Nice one, man.
All right. Well, thanks for staying up with us, James. And it was really nice meeting you, my friend. And we'll see you soon.
Nice, man. Right. Much love, my man. All right. I'll leave you to it just now, dude.
Oh, hey, before I let you go, is there anything that you want to plug? Is there anything you got out in the ether that you'd like people to check out? I'm so sorry I forgot to ask you that.
Check out Linktree/Picts. All right. We've got a series of events coming up in November for Global Psychedelics Week. So if you're in Scotland, check out Linktree/Picts. And we'll get some updates up soon. It's just some videos about Indigenous medicine and stuff like that just now. But we've got a week's worth of stuff. Like, we've got some workshops. We've got some talks. We've got some kind of social stuff. So if this is your jam, then yeah, check it out. I mean, let's try to broaden access to these things and trying to look at ways that we can actually get them to most traumatized people that need them.
Right on.
So, yeah, man. Like,
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah, shoot me that link, and I'll post it with the link to this video if you don't mind.
Will do, man. I will do.
All right, guys. Have a great night. James, thanks again, buddy.
Excellent night. Cheers, man.
See ya.